I survived the accident they all believed killed me. When my uncle saw me at the lawyer's office about to inherit $50 million, his face went completely white. Before I share what happened next, do me one favor. Subscribe and tell me the city or country you're watching from. I love knowing where our stories reach. The morning everything changed, I was driving to my grandmother's estate in Buckhead when the brakes failed. I remember screaming as my Mercedes careened off the mountain road, flipping 3 times before crashing into the ravine. The impact knocked me unconscious instantly. When I woke up in some rural hospital 2 weeks later, bandaged beyond recognition, the nurse told me something that froze my blood. "Honey, you're a miracle." They identified a body at that crash site. "Everyone thinks you're dead." My name is Janelle Morrison and I'm 28 years old. Was 28 years old. According to the world, I died on October 3rd. The nurse, a kind woman named Rita, explained that another woman's body had been found in the wreckage. A Jane Doe who'd apparently been hitchhiking. The car was so mangled and the body so burned that my Uncle Calvin identified her as me from the jewelry she was wearing. My jewelry. The custom Cartier bracelet Grandma Rose gave me for my 21st birthday. "Your family held a beautiful funeral," Rita said softly, showing me her phone. I stared at the photos. My mother weeping over a closed casket, my younger brother Jerome looking lost, my Uncle Calvin giving the eulogy with tears streaming down his face. But something in his eyes looked wrong. Different. Almost relieved. I should have been rushing to tell them I was alive. Instead, something made me pause. That bracelet never left my wrist. Ever. How did it end up on a dead woman in my car? Recovery was brutal. My face required reconstructive surgery, leaving me unrecognizable even to myself. The doctor said I was lucky. My injuries could have been fatal. But as I lay in that hospital bed, scrolling through my memorial posts on social media, luck felt like a bitter word. My best friend Keisha had written, "You were too good for this world." My ex-boyfriend Devin posted our old photos with heartbreak emojis. Even my stepfather, who'd barely tolerated me, called me a bright light extinguished too soon. But it was Uncle Calvin's post that made my stomach turn. My beautiful niece had so much life ahead of her. She'll be deeply missed as we navigate her estate and honor her memory. Estate. The word hung there like a noose. 3 weeks before the accident, Grandma Rose had died, leaving behind a fortune built from her tech investments and real estate empire. $50 million. The will reading was scheduled for November 15th, exactly 3 weeks after my death. Rita brought me newspapers daily. Each one mentioned my family's grief, but buried in the obituary section was something else. The late Janelle Morrison's estate proceedings postponed pending family discussions. I called the hospital's social worker, a sharp-eyed woman named Patricia who'd helped me through the worst of recovery. "I need your help," I told her. "And I need to stay dead a little longer." She studied my face, still swollen, still healing. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking someone tried to kill me. And I want to know who benefits from my death." Patricia became my lifeline. She contacted the estate attorney Bernard Whitmore, without revealing who she was calling for. "I'm inquiring about the Morrison estate on behalf of a potential heir," she said, putting the call on speaker. Mr. Whitmore's voice was crisp, professional. "The will is quite clear. Rose Morrison left everything to her granddaughter Janelle. However, in the event of Janelle's death before the will's execution, the estate passes to Rose's son, Calvin Morrison, with provisions for Janelle's mother Linda and brother Jerome." Calvin. My father's younger brother who'd always been around, always helpful, always just a little too interested in Grandma's business dealings. I remembered him asking about her investments last Christmas, pressing her about stock portfolios while the rest of us exchanged gifts. Grandma had laughed it off but later told me privately, "Baby girl, don't ever let money make you lose sight of family. Your uncle loves you but he loves comfort more." I'd brushed it off then. Now those words haunted me. Patricia helped me access my bank accounts remotely. They hadn't been frozen yet since the death certificate processing was delayed. That's when I found it. A wire transfer from my account to a mechanic shop in Marietta. $5,000, dated 2 days before the crash. The memo read, "Brake service, confidential." I'd never authorized that payment. I'd never even been to Marietta. "Someone used your identity," Patricia said, her voice tight. "Someone who had access to your accounts." I pulled up my banking history. The transfer was made from my laptop's IP address, the laptop I kept at my apartment. The apartment where Uncle Calvin had a spare key for emergencies. I convinced Patricia to visit my apartment under the guise of collecting personal effects for my family. What she found made my blood run cold. My laptop was gone, wiped from existence. But the apartment had been cleaned too thoroughly, too professionally. "It smells like bleach," Patricia reported over the phone. "And your personal documents, photos, everything personal, it's all gone. Someone sanitized this place." But Patricia was thorough. She checked the trash chute and found something wedged in the vent. A receipt from that same Marietta mechanic shop, dated 3 days before my crash. The handwriting on it wasn't mine. It was Calvin's distinctive scrawl. I'd know it anywhere from years of birthday cards and Christmas notes. The mechanic's name was printed at the top, Ray's Auto Service. I had Patricia call them from a burner phone, pretending to be a customer. "Yeah, I remember that job," Ray said, his voice gruff. "Guy came in, said he needed special work done on a Mercedes. Cash only, no records. I told him I don't do that kind of work anymore, learned my lesson years ago. He got mad, left. I kept his deposit though. $5,000 for wasting my time." "Did you see who picked up the car after?" Patricia pressed. "Nobody picked it up. Different guy came the next day, said his brother changed his mind. Took the car and the cash back. Had the same last name on the credit card he flashed. Morrison something." My hands trembled as I processed this. Calvin had tried to tamper with my car, but when that mechanic refused, he'd found someone else. Someone who'd do the job without questions. I couldn't stop thinking about the woman who died in my place. Rita helped me access the Jane Doe case files through her connections with the coroner's office. The deceased was identified weeks after my funeral. Her name was Shanice Coleman, a 32-year-old woman from College Park with a record of petty theft and drug charges. She'd been reported missing by her sister 2 days before my crash. "This wasn't random," I told Patricia during one of our late-night planning sessions. "Someone put her in that car intentionally." Patricia pulled up missing persons reports. "Look at this. Shanice was last seen getting into a black Escalade in her neighborhood. Surveillance footage from a nearby gas station caught it." She enlarged the image on her tablet. The license plate was partially visible, ending in 7MJ. I felt sick. Calvin drove a black Escalade. His vanity plate read, Success 7MJ. The 7MJ stood for 7 million journey, something he'd bragged about when he bought it. "He's trying to make his first 7 million, he told everyone at a family barbecue, laughing. "This plate's gonna remind me daily." I had Patricia file a request for traffic camera footage from the night Shanice disappeared. It took 3 days, but the images came through. Calvin's Escalade, clear as day in College Park at 11:47 p.m. The timestamp put him there exactly when Shanice vanished. In one frame you could see someone in the passenger seat. A woman who looked eerily similar to me in build and hair length. "He picked someone who could pass for you in a burned body," Patricia whispered. "This was premeditated murder. Multiple murders." I knew I needed more than circumstantial evidence. I needed a confession, a witness, something concrete. Rita introduced me to her nephew, Calvin, coincidentally sharing my uncle's name, who worked in private investigation. Young Calvin was 25, sharp as a tack and eager to help. "This is some movie-level stuff," he said, pulling up his laptop. "Let me dig into your uncle's finances." What he found was devastating. Calvin Morrison was drowning in debt, $2 million deep from failed business ventures, gambling losses, and a lifestyle he couldn't afford. His house in Dunwoody was in foreclosure. His cars were being repossessed. Credit card companies were suing him. "Your grandmother's money wasn't just opportunity for him," young Calvin explained. "It was survival. Without it, he loses everything in 60 days. But there was more." Young Calvin traced another payment, this one from Calvin's secret account to a man named Dwayne Tucker, a known criminal with a record for arson and vehicular tampering. $20,000 wired the day before my crash. Dwayne had been arrested twice for insurance fraud schemes involving staged accidents. "This is your smoking gun," Patricia said. "But we need to approach this carefully. If Calvin realizes you're alive before we have everything documented, he might run or worse, try again." I made a decision then. Contact Bernard Whitmore. Tell him Rose Morrison's granddaughter has information about fraud concerning the estate. Request a meeting for November 15th. The original will reading date. Don't mention I'm alive. Just say a representative has critical evidence. Young Calvin grinned. "You're going to walk in there like a ghost." "Exactly," I said. "Let's see how white his face gets when the dead come back to life." As the November 15th meeting approached, I needed to know one more thing. Was my mother involved? Linda Morrison had remarried after my father died, and while we'd never been close, I'd always believed she loved me in her own distant way. Patricia made discreet inquiries, interviewing neighbors and friends under the pretense of writing a memorial piece. The truth broke my heart. My mother had been having financial troubles of her own. Her new husband, Gerald, had been fired from his executive position and they were facing bankruptcy. 2 weeks before my death, security footage from a coffee shop showed her meeting with Calvin. Patricia obtained the audio through a private investigator's connection. "She's going to find out about Rose's will soon," Calvin's voice said clearly. "When she does, everything we've planned falls apart." "You promised me 15%, my mother responded, her voice cold, unfamiliar. "I gave you her schedule, her habits, access to her apartment. I did my part. And you'll get your cut once the estate clears. Just keep playing the grieving mother. Jerome doesn't suspect anything, does he? Jerome's too soft. He actually loved her. Unlike us, he can't see that Janelle was always Rose's favorite, always going to take everything while the rest of us got scraps." I listened to that recording 20 times, each word cutting deeper. My own mother had helped plan my murder. She'd given Calvin my routines, my apartment key, insider information about when I'd be driving to Buckhead. She'd known about the brake tampering. She'd cried at my funeral while knowing I'd been murdered. Patricia found me sobbing in my hospital room. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "But now you know who your real family is, and who they've always been." I wiped my tears and felt something new replace the grief. Rage. Pure focused rage. The one bright spot in this darkness was Jerome. My baby brother, 24 years old and finishing his master's in social work, had no idea about the conspiracy. Young Calvin monitored his communications and found only genuine grief. Jerome had started a scholarship fund in my name, using his own savings. He visited my grave every Sunday, leaving flowers and talking to the headstone. "I miss you, Nellie," he'd said during one visit that was captured on cemetery cameras. "I should have called you more." I should have told you about Mom and Calvin fighting at Thanksgiving about Grandma's money. I thought it was just family drama, but now you're gone and I keep wondering if... No, that's crazy. They loved you. We all did. But Jerome wasn't crazy, his instincts were right. I had Patricia leave him an anonymous tip, directing him to look at Calvin's financial records and the wire transfers. 3 days later, Jerome showed up at Calvin's house unannounced. The doorbell camera caught their confrontation. You were in debt? Jerome demanded. $2 million? And you never mentioned it. That's none of your business, Calvin snapped. It is my business when my sister dies right before a $50 million inheritance. The math doesn't look good, Uncle Calvin. You better watch your mouth, boy. Grief is making you paranoid. Jerome's voice went quiet, dangerous. I'm not paranoid. I'm careful. And I'm going to that estate meeting next week with a lawyer. If something's wrong with Janelle's death, I'll find out. I smiled watching that footage. My little brother had grown up, developed a spine. He would be okay when the truth came out. Better than okay, he'd be free from the poisonous branches of our family tree. Bernard Whitmore was a legend in Atlanta estate law. 65 years old, black, brilliant, and incorruptible. When Patricia finally revealed my survival to him in a private meeting, his reaction was exactly what I needed. Controlled fury. Mrs. Morrison, he said, shaking my bandaged hand gently, what's been done to you is an abomination. But we're going to handle this with precision and maximum legal impact. He'd already suspected something was wrong. Calvin has been pressuring my office for weeks to expedite the probate process, Bernard explained. He's requested advances against the estate, claimed urgent family needs. I've stalled him, sensing something wasn't right. Your grandmother was very specific in her will. She included a clause requiring forensic investigation if her death was followed by any immediate family deaths within 6 months. She knew, I whispered. Grandma knew someone might come after me for the money. Bernard nodded gravely. Rose Morrison was a shrewd woman. She'd seen Calvin's true nature long before you did. That's why she structured her will this way, not just to protect her assets but to protect you. She made me promise that if anything happened to you, I'd investigate thoroughly before distributing a single dollar. He'd already been working with forensic accountants and private investigators. The evidence we'd gathered matched his findings perfectly. We have enough to arrest Calvin and your mother for conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, and a dozen other charges, Bernard said. But I want you to confront them first. I want them to know they failed. I want them to see what their greed cost them. I agreed. November 15th would be Judgment Day, literally and figuratively. November 15th dawned cold and clear. I dressed carefully in a black suit, my reconstructed face still bearing faint scars but unmistakably mine to anyone who looked closely. Patricia had worked with a makeup artist to help me look both professional and striking. I wanted Calvin to have no doubt who I was. Bernard's office was in a towering building in Midtown, all glass and steel and old money. I arrived early, entering through a private entrance to avoid being seen. Bernard had arranged the conference room with strategic precision. Cameras hidden in the walls, court reporters ready, police officers waiting in an adjacent room. This wasn't just a will reading anymore. It was a trap. At exactly 2 p.m., Calvin arrived with my mother and her husband Gerald. They were laughing about something casual, comfortable. Through the one-way glass, I watched Calvin check his watch impatiently. Let's get this over with, he said. I've got a meeting with my financial advisor at 4. Planning how to spend my money already? I murmured. Jerome arrived 10 minutes later with a young woman I didn't recognize. His lawyer friend, probably. He looked exhausted, haunted. My mother barely acknowledged him, too busy whispering with Calvin about vacation homes and investment opportunities. At 2:15, Bernard entered the conference room. "Thank you all for coming," he said formally. "Before we proceed with Rose Morrison's will, there's been a development concerning Janelle Morrison's estate." Calvin leaned forward, false sympathy on his face. "Of course, Bernard. We're here to honor Janelle's memory." "Are you?" Bernard asked coldly. "Then you won't mind meeting the representative handling her concerns." He gestured to the door. I stood up, smoothed my suit and walked in. The silence was absolute. Calvin's face didn't just go white. It went gray ashen like death itself had touched him. His mouth opened and closed soundlessly, a fish drowning in air. My mother screamed, actually screamed, and grabbed Gerald's arms so hard he yelped. Jerome shot to his feet, his chair clattering backward. "Nellie," he whispered. "Nellie." "Hi, baby brother," I said softly, my voice steady despite my racing heart. Then I turned to Calvin, letting all my rage show. "Surprised to see me, Uncle? I bet you are. I bet you thought I was rotting in that grave you put me in." "This isn't, you're dead," Calvin stammered. I identified the body. "The jewelry. The jewelry you stole from my apartment when you broke in to erase evidence?" I stepped closer and he actually flinched. "The jewelry you put on Shanice Coleman's body after you murdered her? Did you think I wouldn't figure it out?" My mother found her voice. "Janelle, sweetheart, this is insane. Don't you dare call me that." I slammed my hands on the conference table. Everyone jumped. "I heard the recording, Mother. She was always Rose's favorite." "That's what you said. You helped him plan my murder for 15% of the inheritance. Your own daughter. The child you gave birth to, raised, claimed to love." "I never meant," she started. "You never meant for me to survive," I finished. "You never meant for me to find out. But I did. And now everyone will know exactly what you are." Bernard pressed a button and the wall screens lit up with evidence. Financial records, wire transfers, the Marietta mechanic's testimony, traffic camera footage of Calvin with Shanice Coleman, the audio recording of my mother's betrayal. Each piece of evidence appeared methodically, damning, irrefutable. Calvin stood abruptly. "I want a lawyer." "You'll need one," Bernard said calmly as the conference room doors opened and police officers entered. "Calvin Morrison, Linda Morrison Hayes, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, wire fraud, and identity theft." The arrest footage went viral within hours. Someone leaked it, probably one of Bernard's assistants, though he'd never admit it. And suddenly, the Morrison inheritance murder plot was national news. My face, scarred but alive, appeared on every major outlet. The story had everything: wealth, betrayal, a daughter rising from the dead to expose her killers. Dwayne Tucker was arrested the same day, caught trying to flee to Mexico. He confessed immediately, hoping for a plea deal. The details were brutal. Calvin had paid him $30,000 total to tamper with my brakes and dispose of the evidence. When the crash didn't kill me instantly, Dwayne had planted Shanice Coleman's body in the wreckage and set it on fire. He'd stolen my jewelry at Calvin's direction, not knowing I was still alive in the ravine, hidden by debris and trees. Shanice Coleman's sister, Tanya, called me personally. "Thank you," she sobbed. "I've been looking for her for weeks. At least now I can bury her properly. At least now someone pays for what happened to her." "I'm so sorry," I told her honestly. "She died because she looked like me. She died because of my family's greed. She died because evil people exist," Tanya corrected gently. "You didn't kill her. You exposed her killers. That matters." Jerome moved in with me during my final recovery. We were the only family each other needed now. He'd been cleared of any involvement, His genuine grief and immediate investigation into Calvin had proven his innocence. Together we planned Grandma Rose's true memorial, one that honored her wisdom and strength rather than being tainted by murder plots. The trial was swift. Calvin and my mother both received life sentences. Gerald was charged as an accessory for helping launder the bribe money. 6 months later I stood in Grandma Rose's house, my house now, and felt peace for the first time since the accident. The $50 million had been officially transferred to my name, with provisions set aside for Jerome and for Shanice Coleman's family as restitution. I'd established the Rose Morrison Foundation for domestic violence survivors and murder victim families, turning blood money into something meaningful. Patricia and Rita came to the foundation's launch party, along with young Calvin and Bernard Whitmore. Jerome brought his girlfriend, the lawyer who'd stood beside him during the arrest. We'd become a chosen family, one built on loyalty rather than blood. You know what Grandma used to tell me? I said during my speech that night. She'd say, "Baby girl, money shows you people's true faces. When they think you're dead, watch who celebrates and who mourns. That tells you everything." I looked around at the faces of people who'd helped me survive, who'd believed in justice even when it seemed impossible. She was right. Death showed me who loved me and who loved my money. It showed me that family isn't about DNA. It's about who stays when everything falls apart. It's about who helps you rise from the ashes even when rising seems impossible. Jerome raised his glass. To Janelle, the hardest person to kill in Atlanta. Everyone laughed, but I felt the weight of truth in his words. I had died in that ravine. The naive, trusting girl who'd believed in family unconditionally was gone. In her place stood someone stronger, wiser, scarred but unbreakable. I'd survived the accident they all believed killed me. But more than that, I'd survived their betrayal. And now I was going to live, really live, on my own terms, surrounded by real love instead of toxic blood ties. To second chances, I said, smiling at my chosen family. And to never forgetting the cost of survival. The dead girl was gone. But the woman who rose from her ashes? She was just getting started.